All right, those are good questions. Now, this is Sean from Florida, and he has questions about cartridges. Ron, can you give me your thoughts on why the Remington 350 Magnum never really took off? They tried twice, I think. Long story short, my dad gave me his 1960s rifle. Absolutely mint condition. As you well know, I must hand load it these days. However, I've taken many deer and hogs with this rifle here in Florida, and none of these animals took a step. You like that? I'm using a Barnes TSX 200 grain. Anyway, I love my 350 mag, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks, Sean. That's an oldie but not so goodie. And you're absolutely right. It didn't last for, 3 or 4 years, and it was already kind of out of the picture. Remington just sort of gave up on it. Now, why was that? I think it was a good idea. It's a belted Magnum case, the same one as the 300 H&H Magnum would use. They shortened it so it would fit in a short action, so it was sort of one of the first short, fat cartridges that became the rage. But it didn't do well in the 1960s when it came out. And the biggest reason, I think, was the rifles it was chambered in were too short and light. The idea was to have a handy, quick brush rifle for elk hunting in heavy timber with some mass to that bullet. So the 35 caliber, people had good luck with the 35 Whalen, but that was on a 30-06 length action. Remington wanted to make this quick, handy little short action rifle. They called the model 600, the Mohawk, I think they called it. And it was a real crazy, racy looking thing with a shark tooth front sight on it and a dog leg handle and things that really made it stand out visually. And it certainly attracted attention that way. And it was a nicely balanced, handy little rifle. But at the weight it came in at with 200 grain bullets that they were selling in their loads for it, ouch, a little bit hard on the shoulder. So a lot of guys didn't like it for the recoil. And the muzzle blast was pretty bad too. We didn't think too much about muzzle blast in those days. We didn't protect our ears all that well, which is why so many of us older gentlemen are a little bit hard of hearing. So I think those are the reasons why it didn't do all that well. Plus, a lot of guys are thinking if I'm going out west to hunt elk, I might need to make a long shot. I mean, it's one thing if you're hunting in the Pacific Northwest, you live there and you know how thick those forests are and you realize I'm never going to see anything further away than 100 yards. So what do I need long reach for? Whereas if you're planning to hunt the drier parts of the Rocky Mountain elk country and maybe throw a mule deer in there, why not get a 300 Magnum? You got more reach, flatter trajectory, less recoil, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's probably why. They did try to resurrect it. Gosh, was it in the early 2000s, I think? They came out with a new model rifle that was sort of a reflection of that old 600 Mohawk. And a 660 was another one they attempted in the 60s. And that didn't work for them either. It was a little bit, I think they put a 20-inch barrel on that one instead of the 18-inch barrel. So they tried, but once again, it never really took off. And the crazy thing is I remember looking in a spear reloading manual when I was doing something on 35s a while back. And the spear manual had the velocity at 2,700 feet per second. I wondered why so low, because that thing ought to be pushing more like 2,900 feet per second. And they had the Whalen, the 35 Whalen doing 2,900 feet per second with a 200 grain bullet or 180 grain bullet, but not the 350. So I scratched my head, and maybe it was the shorter barrel, but they were claiming that they tested it in a 24-inch barrel. Why was it so slow? Well, I think what they were doing was they were matching the original factory load from Remington. It was a 200 grain bullet going 2,710 feet per second or something like that. Now, why Remington did that again, I don't know. Were they thinking maybe there's too much recoil, so let's throttle it back a little bit? Because inside of 200 yards, it'll probably have more than enough punch with that big heavy bullet. The elk hunters won't even care. I don't know. But regardless, the whole thing just sort of fell flat. So if you have one, as you've discovered, you're going to have to hand load. But I think a good hand loader can develop some pretty effective loads for that thing. And if you don't mind the recoil, go for it. For a while there, I remember back in the 90s, there were getting to be pretty good prices on used Model 600s in 350 for elk hunters, specifically working thick cover. So it does have a fan club out there.